Layla, and my presentation is going to be on how immigration policies affect Latino groups in the US. So, to give a quick rundown of what the presentation is going to be about, I personally, and the reason I picked this topic was because I personally grew up with some hardships, being an immigrant that came to the US like about 10 years ago. And I started to question whether if those hardships were just mainly like personal issues or if they were just a bigger issue in general, um, meaning it happens with almost every immigrant that comes to the US. So to do this, I decided that one of the best ways to research this topic would be to research one of the biggest immigrant groups in the US, which are Latino or Chicano Americans or immigrants that come here. And um, pretty much my sort of research basis is what social issues do they face and why why do they find it rather troublesome to integrate into their societies? So the research topic and the significance slash the purpose is the topic is going to be how do immigration policies affect Chicano slash Latino groups in the US and how does this affect their integration to society? And the reason why I find this significant is to be able to truly understand, the true harm that immigration policies actually put on immigrant groups that um on the people that come into the US, not just in Latino Americans, obviously, but pretty much in the wider variety of immigrants that come in. So to begin, my thesis statement was I believe that the inability of Latino groups to properly integrate into society is caused by racial stratification and their race and gender. This then leads to them being viewed as foreigners and outsiders rather than members of their society. So with that thesis statement, I sort of split it up into 10 different sociological concepts, and I'm sort of defining them in these two slides here. So the first five are lower slash middle class, and lower middle class people are just people with incomes ranging between 30,000 and 58,000. Um, Unequal employment status is just means, unemployment is just the ability for people to be actively looking for jobs. However, no jobs are actually like picking them up. So just the unequal employment status just means um there are more people, especially of Latino descendant or Latinos that, try to actively look for jobs but aren't granted in comparison to other groups in the US. The next concept is scapegoat theory, and it's the idea of putting the blame of like as there's a certain issue in a society, you try to put the blame on others rather than trying to resolve the issue. Um, the next topic is racism, and it's just being discriminatory towards someone because of their race. And then we have conflict theory, which is the idea that there is a limited number of resources and everyone wants to access those resources. However, you obviously have to fight for those limited resources because there's only so much that can be distributed, across people. The next five sociological concepts are medicalization, which is trying to put sort of medical or trying to treat non-medical issues as if they were medical issues to begin with. Obviously not all issues are medical, so which I find like, but it's unfortunate how much this actually happens more than we think. Then we have racialization, which is treating someone else, on the basis of their race. Um, yeah, and then we have exclusion, which is when a group is denied from participating in society. It's pretty much trying to say like, oh, you're not one of us. We're like excluding you, because of this and that. Then we have culture, which is just the idea of culture is just when a group of people have shared beliefs, behaviors, and values, which sort of gives them like a common ground, between one another. And then finally, we have intersectionality, which is the idea that many different identities come together and form different experiences. Now, from my analysis, this is what I was able to find. So when it came to the topic of lower slash middle class, I was able to find that two-thirds of all immigrants are labor workers. Um, this sort of gives, different perceptions. This is viewed differently by some people. Some think that, because you're a labor worker, you're actually it's a respected job because we actually need more workers like that. However, some to tend to put hateful stereotypes on them and start calling these people lazy and that they lack education because they're not willing to put in that, extra work studying in order to get the higher or better jobs, I guess. Then we have unequal employment status, which shows that a fifth of all unemployed Americans are Latinos. So this sort of and there's already a bad stigma around, unemployed people and them um being seen as lazy just because they can't find a job when in reality it's really unfair to hate because they are the ones actively looking for jobs. That's like the only way sort of unemployment is counted as a statistic. And yeah, they're the ones actively looking for jobs, yet they're the ones that keep getting denied those jobs. Then we have scapegoat theory, which is the idea that um I found that immigrants are sort of always getting blamed, and this is currently a common tactic used by Donald Trump to try and, put a lot of the issues in the US on the immigrants that are coming into the US. Um, this is by some seen as like one of the biggest societal issues. And so like a couple examples is they believe that because we have a lot of drug issues, assault issues, they believe they tend to put all those problems on the immigrants that are coming into the US, which is like realistically the complete opposite. Um, racism in terms of racism, um, I found that because some people may have certain um because there's a lot of people that talk badly about and put those, bad stigmas around immigrants coming into the US. Therefore, this eventually leads to some sort of racism at least. Um, just because Hispanics or Latinos, whenever they come in, because there's so much like hate and talk about them, um, this go this then goes to show how like 25% of Latinos have experienced racism, just due to the fact that a lot of them have been bad-mouthed, and we've sort of as a society built a bad reputation around immigrants when realistically they haven't done anything. And unfortunately, this is still a prevalent issue today. When it came to conflict theory, I found conflict theory is obviously the constant fight for resources, and therefore, whenever immigrants come into the U.S., um, the people who were in the U.S. beforehand, they start seeing immigrants as taking away their resources because they're so limited. Obviously, you know, they don't want someone else taking their opportunity or chance when they were in a different country otherwise. Um, this puts a resentment against immigrants, obviously, because they don't want them here just to um take up the limited resources that we have here. And yeah, that's why you see a lot of people when they push for immigration bans and all of that. That's pretty much where it comes from, or that's a big issue for why it happens. Medicalization is the idea again of um putting a non-medical or medicalizing a non-medical issue. And whenever they see that some immigrants have either some physical or mental issues, unfortunately, this is still happening. I think it's happening a lot in ICE units, which is like the sort of like the police camps, but like for where they hold immigration um or immigrants. Um, and pretty much if they have physical or mental issues, most of them undergo forceful sterilization, meaning they don't want them having kids anymore. And obviously this isn't their choice, but they've just been forced to undergo this. Uh, when it comes to racialization, police often target low-income areas, I've found. This is due to stereotypical assumptions that, obviously they have drugs and, they have crime, which we know isn't always true. But unfortunately, because the police are always there, they're getting caught for the most even basic of crimes, crimes that are even committed in rich neighborhoods all the time. But you know, don't. But the richer neighborhoods don't have the same police enforcement, therefore they're not getting caught as much. And because of, the stereotypical assumptions and whatnot, they get bigger charges for the same crimes, unfortunately, which, um, yeah, it's the justice system isn't always equal. Depends on the judge's, context or whatever the story is. And then finally, not finally, we have exclusion, which is the increase in anti-American legislation. Um, there has been again an increase in anti-American legislation. For example, when we have whatever Trump was talking about. Um, yeah, they just don't want people to. Yeah, because of all the bad mouthing happening, they don't want people, immigrants specifically, to be in the U.S. So what they're doing is trying to make it illegal so that you can get arrested on the basis of just being an immigrant, or it's mainly for undocumented immigrants, but again, this can leave a bad stain on your record if you're arrested for such thing. And you would get if you have a stain on your record, it obviously prevents you from getting jobs and um prevents you from, a lot of major things in your like later on down your career if it shows you have a criminal record, which can gives a bad like it can just give a bad association to I guess any undocumented immigrant who because if this is a prevalent issue, then it will just be, generalized across any other. Next, we have culture, and culture for this, it just says that um, just because, Latinos have various different, they have different culture than the typical American culture. Um, Therefore, whenever they try to come here, it's hard for them to get acclimated or integrated into their society because their cultures are so different. Uh, this is sort of a similar idea with different immigrants when it comes to, Arab immigrants, uh, you know, potentially some European or like Eastern European. Their cultures obviously aren't very similar and they can vary differently. Yeah, due to there not being very much common ground. And then finally we have intersectionality, which is the idea that uh you can have different experiences based off of um the different sort of how can I say this? Because you come from different backgrounds and you have different, for example, you have different races, different genders. Um, those can those ideas can of like race, gender, culture, all that can come together and it can shape different experiences depending on um, what sort of blend you have. So obviously some can be harsher experiences than others. If, for example, a person is like has disabilities, they'll obviously overcome more obstacles than a person with the same sort of same race, gender, and everything, but like they're an able person. Um, that's just an example, but yeah. In conclusion, the reason why it's hard to integrate into society is due to cultural differences. This is sort of like generalizing everything, and then we have bad perceptions that are put onto Latinos or even other immigrant groups as well. Um, this can those bad perceptions can be formed into hate if this keeps happening and if we're sort of blinded to it, and obviously due to selfishness because people don't want the whole idea of them taking like immigrants coming and taking their jobs and their resources. People are opposed to that, and which is why those are sort of some issues why it's harder for immigrants to integrate into society. It makes it all those make it more challenging to engage in society when almost everyone in the society refuses to engage those immigrants that come in. Right. Here are my references. Thank you.